My term working in the finance industry, working at some of these companies you can see here, Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and many others, I've dealt with my fair share of toxic managers, and some of them you can see here in this, some of the signs of a toxic manager you can see here through this video we're going to review right now. If you've dealt with any toxic managers, let me know in the comments, and let's hear some of the signs of a toxic manager so you can address them as soon as you can here.
Work for a boss who is clearly toxic, a type of manager which doesn't want you to succeed. These managers will do anything to prevent you from being successful at your job. Their goal is to control you, to make you leave, or even to get you fired. This is why they start gaslighting you.
So I've dealt with this type of gaslighting where they try to basically say one thing happened when reality is different, and they try to convince you that reality that actually happened didn't really happen, right? So you deal with people where you do a piece of work correctly or you follow their instructions and they say, no, I gave you a different set of instructions. You deal with these type of people a lot, particularly if they're unhappy in their personal life. I've noticed there's plenty of unhappy, miserable, middle-aged people, and they typically are in middle management positions and they do take it out on their juniors. So let's listen to a bit more details of signs of a toxic manager.
Whatever happens, it is always your fault. This is one of the major reasons why gaslighting isn't easily detectable, because your gaslighting manager is good at manipulation. They will make you feel that everything is your fault. This is why gaslighting is underreported in the workplace, because you become convinced that you don't do things well, that you are not good enough, that you might deserve this treatment you are getting, which couldn't be more wrong. Many times we hear people justifying their bad experience with statements like, all managers are hard to please, or nobody likes their boss. But there is a big difference between a tough manager and a toxic gaslighter. Gaslighters will go out of their way to make you doubt yourself and your...
So this is true. I've dealt with instances where many people would think things, oh, this is my fault, because the manager will blame you for their own mistakes, or blame you for other team members getting things wrong, and everything's like, oh, you should have known better, you should have checked this, rather than putting the blame on someone else. Because typically you might have more senior people or more popular people in the office, and if you're not one of the senior people or the popular people, if something goes wrong on the team, people will blame you and you get blamed for other people's mistakes. That's why when you are working in the corporate environment, you need to make sure you've got a track record of everything you're working on, make sure it's clear what instructions you've been given, try to get as much of that in writing as possible so you don't get blamed for other people's inefficiencies or mistakes, right? I remember an instance where I started working at an investment bank. I've only been there a few months, and I was given a piece of work from my manager and I gave them a long detailed answer, and the second time they asked me another piece of work to complete, and in that case I wasn't sure whether they wanted a long piece of work or a short piece, so I've given them a short, quick response, and they started shouting at me and swearing at me. They wanted a long, detailed response and analysis, and it wasn't clear because they don't give clear instructions, right? But people, because as I say, in that case, some of the managers I dealt with, I don't think they're too happy in their personal life, some of these people, and they use instances at work to kind of take out their unhappiness, to curse other people for their unhappiness in their own personal life by creating drama at work. And they always have their own version of events which are completely detached from reality and completely deranged, but if you point it out, they get all upset about it.
Next sign is when your boss uses phrases like, don't take it so personally, or don't be so sensitive, and similar. While don't take it so personally might sound innocent enough, it's a serious red flag phrase. It's a classic phrase used by gaslighters to assert control and spread self-doubt. And while said to us, sometimes we might really feel guilty because we feel we've overreacted. When you react to something insulting or cruel that your boss said or done, they criticize you for taking things personally. This way they don't have to take accountability for what they've done. The issue is that the more someone tells you that you are being oversensitive, the more you start to think that they may have a point. And simultaneously, the more you start doubting yourself. And that, of course, is exactly what the gaslighter wants. Regardless of how justified someone thinks your reaction is, it is your reaction. It is not up to your boss or anyone else to tell you how you should feel or how legitimate those feelings are.
This is quite interesting, right? So what he's explaining here is that many people would kind of push their kind of personal beliefs on you or tell you not to take things personally. Now, I've dealt with work environments where they do people do push their personal beliefs on you, right? They try to put you in a position where they try to cancel you or make you look stupid in front of other people, right? Or deliberately try to antagonize you and provoke you to get you to overreact, right? Or maybe that you say something a bit controversial in front of other people by trying to provoke you. I'll give you a funny example here. I remember working at an investment bank, and the topic, again, I try not to get involved in any of these controversial topics, but everything's controversial now, where a manager at the time was trying to say, do you think men or women should pay on the first date of a date, right? If men and women are dating. And I said, well, if you have gender equality, then men and women should pay the same. And this guy shouted in the office at me for having that opinion. And he's like, you just care about, you think all women care about is money. And he said this really loud on a trading floor of a major investment bank, because he was trying to make me look ridiculous. And this is the type of petty, passive-aggressive things you have in the workplace environment with these type of insecure liberal men a lot of the times, where they want to kind of make themselves look good and make you look bad because you're not liberal enough, you're not progressive enough. You get these type of shit-libs, if you know that term, who try to play this type of interaction with you and try to use you, or try to make everything you believe to come across as conspiracy theory or far right. They'll find any angle they can to make you look bad in front of other people and them look good. So it's kind of crazy. Now, it's kind of depressing, because now that's what the workplace environment has turned into. Many cases, it's not about productivity. It's about trying to catch you, right? Trying to get you, cancel you, things like that. And because the workplace hasn't become about work anymore in many cases, it's become about this type of woke ideology.
Sign is when they deny saying or doing something, which is clearly a lie, and sometimes you even have a proof of that. I did not say that. Since gaslighters want you to question your reality, you might hear this often. And sometimes it will just drive you crazy because you clearly remember that conversation. Or you might even have an email where this was discussed and confirmed. But they will tell you one thing and then they will deny it. That is their strategy. Sometimes they will also withhold important information from you so you wouldn't be able to complete your work the right way. Your boss tells you one thing on Monday and the exact opposite on Tuesday, and then you have no idea what you should believe.
So this is very real. I've dealt with that again in the finance industry, right? So typically they would give you confusing instructions, or you ask them a question for clarification and they'll ignore you. I've dealt with instances where I'm sitting next to my manager on many occasions and they'll just pretend to ignore me. Like, I'll be talking to them directly because they're sitting like literally one desk next to me, right next to me, and I'll say, okay, so can we just clarify whether you want it this way or that way? And they'll just act like they didn't hear you and pretend to just be staring at their screen. This is like a common tactic in the investment banking industry, on the trading floor, and they're not even doing something super busy. They'll be chit-chatting with co-workers, but they'll ignore you right to your face and pretend like that's something they're allowed to do. And then I've dealt with instances where my direct line manager, who'd be quite difficult, he'd answer my questions when the managers above him would be around. They'd be sitting around the desk. But when the senior management is not around, he'd just ignore me or ignore other people asking questions because he tries to act like he's better than them. This is the type of passive aggressiveness you got to deal with.
Employees. Gaslight, I'm wrong. Sign number 4, when they compare you to other employees. Gaslighters use the comparison as a wedge between people. Why can't you produce it like David? He comes in at 8 a.m. every day. If he can do it, why can't you? Or Maria is doing such an excellent job. Why can't you be as good as Maria? One thing is putting someone as an example to encourage other employees in the workplace and to motivate them. But something completely different is when you are compared to someone to make you feel lesser.
This is quite another common thing, and I realized that, often you get compared to employees who are not necessarily more skilled than you, more talented than you, but they're better at sucking up to management than you, and they're like, oh, you don't fit in like this other employee, you're not a team player like these other employees because you're not playing the suck up to management game, right? Or I remember some passive aggressive comments from co-workers who are a bit more senior on a different part of the team saying, oh, you should leave and we'll replace you, and making jokes like that, like, we'll get rid of you, things like that, and then laughing it off. And it's a bit like, I don't really deal with passive aggressive statements like that too well. I don't do well with like people making disses and making threats. If you're going to say something, be direct about it. The workplace environment's too passive aggressive, and you've got loads of like weak liberal men, to put it as nice as I can, who will play all these little power games, throw these cheap shots at you. And if you're in the real world outside of the office, they're not going to be able to do that. Do you get what I mean? They won't get away with that. If we're in the real world and we take away your pointless job title and your little sign on the desk that says you're this level of seniority, you're not getting away with making certain passive aggressive statements with me or most people, right? We have to take this outside. It's a different game. And that's what that's quite important to notice, right? You got lots of weak men who are put in positions of power, in some cases women too, who try to play these power games with you, right? And they try to act like you need to agree with all their personal opinions on politics, on like I say, relationships, things like that, or you have to go and socialize with them to like desperately seek their favor. And I remember working alongside some co-workers, and there was a clear distinction between the co-workers that were sucking up to management and pretending to agree with them because it would benefit their career, and those that didn't. And I just don't have that suck up type of skill with me. And if someone's, especially if the management's being deliberately manipulative, I'm gonna put in less effort at work. You're not gonna try and power game me into being more submissive for your benefit. That's crazy to me.
Next sign is quite connected. When they play favorites, look out for those bosses which openly show favoritism to certain members of the team. And a lot of times these team members are not top performers at all. My ex-boss, the one who inspired my Toxic Boss video series, he actually brought on board one of his close friends to work with us and to report directly to him. And needless to say that this person was getting a completely different treatment from the rest, being promoted twice in a matter of just a couple of months. Sometimes they would disappear together for lunch, or they would hang out outside of work during workout.
So this is another important example, right, where every workplace, every company, every team management have their favorites, even though if they pretend they're not their favorites. I've had co-workers in another investment bank, I won't name here, where the manager would have a certain favorites, and they would go on holiday together to San Francisco and places like that. And it was a bit of a weird dynamic when they have some clear favorites, and they'd obviously get a fast track to promotions and get invited to work drinks and things like that. And there'll always be favorites where certain people get invited to like work team events with the favorites would get invited to team events with the manager outside of work, going to work drinks and social events. But if you're not one of the manager favorites, you don't get invited to that. And I don't really care about that because I don't care about after work events. But if there's a clear distinction based on your ability to be social and be popular in the workplace versus if you're good at the job, then it really starts becoming an issue and impacting your income and your ability to develop your career. So it's just something to bear in mind how much social dynamics really do overpower your ability to do a good job. Your manager might prefer a person who sucks up to them versus people who do the good jobs, do the good work.
Ways of manipulation could also include spreading gossip about you to damage your reputation, changing project guidelines, adding extra work to increase your chances for a failure, invading your privacy, listening to your conversations, monitoring your location within the office, and watching who you speak to. They will also take credit for your work while telling you that they changed everything in your original idea, so it's no longer yours. Sometimes they can openly criticize your original idea. They would tell you that it's never going to work, and then suddenly they would implement it as their own later on.
So again, I've dealt with these type of instances of different gaslighting type of examples here, right? Where people be gossiping. If you have a different view, they try to, attack you. I remember working at a major investment bank, and one of the most angry the manager had got at me is they asked me, "Oh, what'd you do on the weekend?" I said, "Oh, I went to a different restaurant." It was a vegan restaurant at the time, right? And they had these fluoride-free water. Typically, if you want fluoride-free water, you have to use your own water distiller, things like that. But they were selling it in bottles. There's a famous company that sells fluoride-free water in bottles. And I tried that, and because he thought it was a conspiracy theory that fluoride-free water would negatively impact your health, he was fuming because he got this idea in his head over a few months of conversations that I was some kind of far-right conspiracy theorist. And then he was furiously Googling on his workplace PC, trying to find out that fluoride isn't bad for your health, fluoride in water is okay. It was completely bizarre. But this is what I mean. People will find any little thing to label you far-right conspiracy theorist, misogynist, whatever crazy thing. just because they have an axe to grind. They want someone to hate. They want some drama in the office. It's completely bizarre, right? And how do you deal with these type of toxic managers, right? Firstly, I would say focus on getting as much communication and instructions in writing versus discussing with them. Make sure it's clear what the facts are. Set clear boundaries in terms of when you arrive and leave at work and what you're willing to do and how much time you have, and if you need extra time to do work, make sure that's clear and they don't try to label you as someone who's late at doing work and is not good at doing the work. And avoid getting dragged into the drama, because there's always drama in the workplace and emotion, and typically, like I say, in my experience, these emotional kind of weak liberal men, they typically add a lot of unnecessary drama in the workplace. Trust your instincts, and if someone feels off or they feel like they're gossiping or being negative about you, try to kind of navigate that effectively, whereby you don't let that impact you too much, and be careful who you trust. And don't confront the gaslighting manager, right? Because they're never going to react well to it. They're always going to be in denial. They're always going to be the victim and blame you and argue against you and try to make you look bad. And they have leverage because they're in a management position and you're not. So what you should effectively do is don't confront them. Focus on getting your work done. And if it's really bad, find another job. But it is difficult, and that's the challenging thing about the work environment. You just go there to do your work, but you've got to deal with these type of weird personalities, right? Now, I am a career coach. I've helped people, get jobs at some of these top companies I mentioned here, where I've worked for over 10 years in the finance industry. And I help provide career advice. If you're interested, there is a link in description. I'll be happy to talk with you. And thanks for listening. Let me know your experience with these crazy managers in the comments section. There are 2 recommended videos on the screen right now, and I'll see you next time.